Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the joint meeting of the Finance Committee and the Planning Board. Tonight, we will hear from the Planning Board regarding their articles, and at that point afterwards, they will adjourn to deliberate, and the Finance Committee will continue with 2 more articles of their own. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Terrence Boland.
All right. Okay. In accordance with provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 5, the Planning Board is holding a public hearing tonight with the Finance Committee on warrant articles for the special town meeting to be held December 7th, 2024. Article 1, to see if the town will vote to amend the zoning bylaw and the associated zoning district map of the town of Wilmington as follows: to create a new MBTA communities multi-family overlay district, or to take any other action related thereto. Rather than reading the entire article, I'll give an overview of the sections of the bylaw and the zoning map that are proposed to be added or amended. Add a new section 6.12, section 6.12, MBTA communities multifamily overlay district. 2, amend the zoning district map by superimposing the MBTA communities multifamily overlay district on the underlying zoning. Amend section 2.1, amend section 2.2, amend table 2 standard dimensional regulations, amend table 1 principal use regulations, and all that. I'll ask the planning director to provide an overview, please.
Thank you. Okay. Valerie Gingrich, I'm the Director of Planning and Conservation. And to give you a little bit of background tonight about the MBTA communities legislation, it was signed by Governor Baker in 2021. It impacts 177 MBTA communities, and it requires an as-of-right multifamily housing zoning district of reasonable size. So this law is not an affordable housing law. This is for market rate housing, full price housing. So it's not an affordable housing requirement like 40B is. And before we get into the actual proposal, I wanted to go over some of the financial impacts of not complying with this new state law. And first, there would be a reduction in the Wilmington Housing Authority capital funding. And there would be grant funding impacts to the town. And the town, this is important because the town receives millions of dollars in grant funding, especially over the past 5 years. And one example of that is the $3.89 million that we received as a MassWorks grant for the Lubbers Brook Culvert and Sewer Extension in North Wilmington. That grant program, we would no longer be eligible for money through that program if zoning isn't approved. Another example of how the town could be impacted is, since I last gave this presentation, we were actually awarded a grant through the MVP program. We had applied last spring, and we were awarded $321,000 of grant funding for the design and permitting of a deteriorating culvert at Martins Brook, which that's on Route 62 as you're heading towards North Reading. You're past the health center, you're just about to Shea Concrete. That's where the Martins Brook culvert goes across. So this program, the MVP program, is on the list of grant programs that would be impacted by not complying with the law. And we had a kickoff meeting a few weeks ago, and the representative was there from the MVP program, and we talked about how the town was going to be voting on the MBTA zoning, and she said, oh, well, we have to stay in touch about that. So, you know, kind of insinuating that there could be a result in this grant funding, because it is reimbursement grant, so we don't have that money yet. We would be reimbursed for it. So she said we should stay in touch, and I guess even another more important, impact would be typically they'll fund construction funding for culverts like that. especially if they've gotten a design grant. So that would be up to $3 million for a culvert. And so if we were not able to get that through the MVP program, we'd have to fund that otherwise. And then there's the other, I guess the less defined statement that's out there is that other discretionary funding decisions would be impacted by not complying with the law. And I think everyone's probably heard of Milton. They are in court with the state over compliance with the law. Milton earlier this year, so their deadline to comply was the end of last year. So earlier this year, they had a seawall grant taken away from them, which that program was not on the list of programs that would be impacted. So we're seeing that state funding that's not on the list is being impacted by noncompliance as well. So some examples of other grants that we receive, DPW got a $180,000 through Mass DEP for PFAS. And then larger dollars are transportation projects. Lowell and Woburn Street, that intersection that's currently under construction, that was funded, the construction's funded by state and federal money through the MPO TIP process, $5.6 million. That project was a town initiative that we received that construction funding for through the TIP process, and there's a scoring mechanism that goes into that. So when I last spoke to the representative from the MPO, he said that currently they are penalizing points-wise, scoring-wise, they're penalizing projects that aren't compliant with, towns that aren't compliant with the MBTA zoning. And they're also having additional conversations this TIP round about more stringent policies. So the next kind of town initiative that we would look at for transportation is Lowell and West Street intersection. So that project could be impacted, would be impacted scoring-wise or even more stringently by non-complying. So before getting into the specifics of the proposal, just a quick overview on zoning. Zoning is really a list of things that you can do on a parcel. It's a list of options. You know, if you're on Main Street and you're in the general business district, you can build an office building, you can build a bank, you can build a retail building. Currently, all these things are allowed. So it's really kind of the list of things that you could do on your property. And there's another phrase that you may have heard, as of right, and that phrase is, it's basically the uses that you can do without any sort of special approval. So an office, you can build an office, you don't have to go to the ZBA to see if it's acceptable. You can do an office. So that's an as-of-right use, a use that you don't need any discretionary approval for. You can do it. And then zoning also sets up the rules for, you know, what size of something you can build on a site. So setbacks, how far you need to be from the property line, where your building can be. And then also height, how tall you can build a building. And there's other dimensionals, but those are sort of the big ones, the important ones. And then getting into Wilmington's multifamily requirements for this law, there needs to be an as-of-right multifamily housing zoning district of 50 acres, at least 50 acres in size. Half of that district has to be within a half mile of the train station. And then it needs to have a unit capacity of 1,248 units. And a note on that 1,248, because it seems alarming, right? It's a big number. When you think about that number, That's the number that we have to get to on the compliance spreadsheet that the state gave us, right? So the spreadsheet has to equal that number. That spreadsheet and the maps that are associated with it don't take into account fine details that are on the ground, so, right? So they're not looking at soil conditions. They're not looking at whether you're doing a sewer or septic. They're not even capturing the fine detail of wetlands. So when you look at those fine details, you're actually going to find that you can do less units on a site than the spreadsheet says you can, because there are a lot more constraints on the ground, right? So for instance, Regency Place over on West Street, that is a 40B development that was built some time ago. It has 120 units currently. They had to do a septic system there. They don't have access to sewer. And the wetlands on their property are a bit more expansive than the GIS layer shows. So they did 120 units there, whereas the spreadsheet says that you can do a lot more units there. But that site is really kind of maxed out at 3 stories and with the parking requirements. So the spreadsheet is not real numbers on the ground, is I guess the lesson with the 1248. So don't just have that in mind when we kind of go through the districts, that the 1248 isn't a what's going to be built number. So the planning board was tasked with putting kind of feelings aside and trying to find the best option for compliance with this. And the focus was on existing multifamily and commercial areas, not looking at single-family residential neighborhoods, but looking at existing multifamily, really to capture the multifamily that's already been built. So if we're now allowing multifamily use on a site that's already built as multifamily, really we're not really making a lot of change on the ground. So they looked at those areas. There were constraints that we had to take into account. We had to avoid the groundwater protection district and floodplain district. And there was an online survey that was done August through September of last year. There were a lot of conversations, and all of those meetings, conversations, led to a proposal called the MBTA Communities Multifamily Overlay District. And an overlay is basically we're not erasing the zoning that's there. So you can still on Main Street do an office or a bank or a retail building. An overlay just adds options on top of that. So now you would be able to do multifamily housing, or you could do a bank, or you could do an office, or you could do retail. So it's another option on top of what you could already do in that zoning district. So the board identified sub-districts, and there are 4 of them. 3 of them are within the half mile of the train station, and 1, West Street, is outside that half mile. The zoning applies, this multifamily kind of allowance for zoning only applies to these specific areas. It's not townwide. It's really confined to the areas that we're going to go through right now that are identified on the map. Unlike 40B, which you can kind of pick a parcel anywhere in town, this is strictly these areas only. So I'll go through each sub-district, first being the one that's outside the half mile, which is West Street. And this sub-district, kind of at the top of the image there is Lowell Street. To the right is 93, and then the red line that kind of runs down from Lowell Street is West Street. So it's 4 different parcels, and we set a height limit of 3 stories, 20-foot setbacks, and two parking spaces requirement. And this district is comprised of 100 to 104, which is actually a multifamily housing development that was already approved by the ZBA through the 40B process. And that's 132 units that will be built at that site. So again, we're allowing multifamily there, but it's already permitted as multifamily. So no changes to what will be on the ground. And then moving south, there's a little parcel in there, 108. It's a single-family home. It's less than an acre, and it has a good amount of wetlands on it. But that parcel would be able to be developed into housing. And then south of there, 114, that's the storage facility. And so someone would have to basically come in, tear down the storage facility to build housing. I'm told that storage facilities are a very good investment, so I'm not sure that that would happen anytime in the near future or even at all. So, you know, zoning allowance, it doesn't mean you have to build housing, it's an option that you can do. And there's no sewer there. So then the last parcel in this district, sub-district, is Regency Place, and I kind of mentioned this before. It's 120 units there. It's 3 stories. So us allowing multifamily of 3 stories, it's actually already there. So that's already built on the ground. So again, we tried to capture some of these spaces that are already multifamily, but they're not necessarily zoned for it. The other 3 sub-districts are half-mile from the train, and I'll go through each one. You see the large T symbol there, that's the train station, and Main Street running kind of up from there. I'll just go through each one, kind of zoom into the maps. The first one being the Burlington Ave sub-district. This is really comprised of only one parcel. It's the Metro Apartments parcel. So again, it's already developed as a 3-story multifamily housing. And here's a picture of it. And it has 108 units. You see the wooded portion of it. Looks like it might be more developable land, but it actually has a conservation restriction on that portion, so that piece of it cannot be developed. So the site is really pretty fully developed as is, and that's why we're including it in the sub-district. Next, we have the Deming Way sub-district, which is a little bit further down Burlington Ave. And this is the Wilmington Housing Authority's senior affordable housing site. They have 69 units there. And we would be, I got some images here of their 2-story building and their office building. They would be able to redevelop that site if they found the funding for that. They could redevelop that site again as multifamily, senior affordable housing. And they have we reduced the parking requirement there since it is senior affordable. And then lastly, the Main Street mixed-use sub-district. So train station down at the bottom left, and Main Street is the bottom red line, and the tracks are the top red line. And then it runs up to the Hyundai dealership, and then all of the uses kind of in between. It's only that side of the street with EJ's and Dunkin' Donuts and House of Pizza, Dollar General. So from Burlington Ave, the train station, up to the Hyundai dealership. And in this sub-district, we allowed 2 to 3 stories of height, same setbacks, 1.5 parking spaces per unit. And just to note on this one, well, I'll explain the 2 to 3 range there. But the Hyundai dealership, the largest parcel in this sub-district, actually came in for permits to redevelop their site as a new car dealership, a new Hyundai dealership. So they recently did that, and I think they'll be owning the site. So it's not looking like it would be redeveloped as multifamily. But to explain the 2 to 3 story height allowance, so if you are doing residential only, so think about a townhouse or something, you're allowed to do 2 stories of height. So that would be for, you know, a 2-story apartments or townhomes. But to encourage active uses on Main Street, commercial uses, since it is Main Street, we want to have a kind of an active ground floor experience, walkable type of environment. The zoning allows for 3 stories if you are putting a commercial use on the ground floor. So you basically get to put the 2 stories of residential above the commercial floor as a height incentive to provide that commercial. Some additional notes on this subdistrict. 3 stories of height, that height allowance is already existing on Main Street. So today you could do a 3-story office, you could do, I don't know that anyone's doing a 3-story bank, but you can do 3 stories on Main Street today, so it's not a deviation from what's allowed physically. And then a note that on the other side of Main Street, the Bank of America side of Main Street, you can do multifamily housing there currently by special permit through the planning board. You don't see that use there. And again, the point is that just because you would be able to do this use, you wouldn't see it immediately happen. Sometimes it doesn't happen. But residential use is allowed on the other side of Main Street, and we haven't seen that being taken advantage of on the whole. And just to reiterate again that property owners and developers do not have to build residential. It's just another option that they have on the list. Other elements of the proposed zoning, there are streetscape design requirements that have to be met to focus on the pedestrian experience. So you're having, you know, wider sidewalks, possibly outdoor seating to create a pedestrian friendly atmosphere. The zoning includes 10 to 15% affordable requirement, and I'll get into that with the other article that's been separated. And also the other article, a clarification to the site plan review section of our bylaw. And then the deadline for us and a lot of other communities, I think it's over 60 of them have a deadline of the end of this year. The deadline is the end of the year to avoid the financial impacts and legal enforcement. As of today, the list was updated that 81 communities have adopted zoning to comply with the requirement. There are a bunch of them that will be voting on it in the near future. Surrounding communities, Andover, Burlington, Woburn have adopted zoning. Reading's vote is coming up in November, and Tewksbury and North Reading have voted no. And I think they're going to stay a no to the end of the year. And Billerica, I think they may be voting on it, but we couldn't find a date for them. So that's sort of the larger context of what's happening around us. And then just in closing, just to circle back to the financial impacts of adopting or not adopting the zoning. This zoning was really carefully crafted to result in little change on the ground. And I had a couple conversations with developers recently, and sort of bolstered the thought of any changes in these districts wouldn't happen quickly. I was told that one developer looked at the zoning and kind of laughed to himself and said, you know, it's not really something that he'd be able to do something with on Main Street for building multifamily, because the market's just not there yet. So this is really an opportunity for the future to build some multifamily housing, but it would not, since we've taken credit for a lot of the housing that's already built, it doesn't result in a lot of changes on the ground. So that's the end of the presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions, Mr. Chair.
All right. So I'll start with planning board. Any questions from the planning board? I know we've kind of been over this a lot, but no. Okay. Finance committee?
I have one, Valerie. Do the units already on the ground count toward the 124, the 1,248?
So the units don't count, but that land area counts. So the land area goes into the spreadsheet and spits out a unit number that's different than what's actually on the ground. So the parcel counts, but that spreadsheet doesn't care what's actually there today.
Scott?
I have a question about Deming Way, and this could just be my ignorance on how that property is zoned and owned, but it's owned by Wilmington Housing Authority, right? So changing the overlay on this, it could no longer be senior housing if the housing authority were to dispose of that property, or would it still remain a senior housing zoned area?
So if the housing authority disposed of that property, the zoning would stay what the zoning would stay.
Mm-hmm. Is it currently zoned as senior housing though?
No, so
Okay.
it's not. I think it's just a residential zoning.
That's what I looked
Yeah.
it up and I think that's what it said. I
Yeah.
just wanted to be sure I was reading it correctly.
Yeah, but I haven't heard of a lot of properties being disposed of, those types of properties being
Right.
disposed of. But if that did happen for some reason, the zoning would remain intact.
Okay. Thank you.
Brad?
Excuse me, I have a question and a comment. My question is this the same proposal that went before town meeting in May, or has it been changed in any way subsequent to that being tabled?
Sure. This is the same proposal that you saw at town meeting. Remember at town meeting, though, we had some amendments that we did on the floor. So we incorporated those amendments into the actual text. But it is, we may have done some slight wording changes on the inclusionary piece of it, just to kind of perfect what we were saying there. But substance-wise, yes, it's exactly the same. So the districts, the areas are exactly the same, and the substance of the zoning is exactly the same.
Thank you. My comment is the presentation is so heavy on the punishment that it doesn't really, I think if there are benefits or if there are reasons that might benefit the town of Wilmington, such as getting more housing so that more of our children can stay and live in town or whatever, I think those benefits should be emphasized more than starting a presentation with the heavy hand of the law that we will feel if we don't comply. I just think, it makes my blood boil. I'm sure many other people at town meeting makes their blood boil, and I just think, I think it's important to say it's a law and we must comply, and there are potential penalties if we don't, but I think the presentation is way too heavy on the punishment that may or may not happen as a result of if this doesn't pass, and I think to not do that really doesn't respect the voters, and I just think that's a mistake. So I just wanted to share that comment.
Anybody else? Okay, I have a couple of comments. Okay, so I have a couple of questions. Is there any difference between these units being condos versus apartments?
No, so zoning can't dictate ownership. So it could be either apartments or condos.
Okay, and I think at the last town meeting, you gave a number that you felt realistically would be the impact, and it was like a few hundred units. Is that still a good number?
Yeah, so if you take out the Hyundai dealership because they've permitted as a new dealership, and you assume that Demingway is not going to be redeveloped, and that the existing multifamily won't be redeveloped. So it's really kind of the stretch of Main Street from Burlington Ave, just short of the Hyundai dealership. I think that number comes out to something like 175.
And my last question, has Governor Healy mentioned anything about the impact of this on the MSBA program? The school funding?
I haven't. So there was an interview where the governor said that funding for roads, bridges, and schools could be impacted, but we haven't heard anything beyond that, just that interview. And what I have heard is that people suspect it won't be impacted, but I don't know if others have heard anything about that, but I don't know that there's been anything definitive.
Okay. So I think that, first of all, I think you did an amazing job of collecting areas in town that can be counted towards this requirement. And to basically come in at under 200 units potentially, and that's not even, in my opinion, realistic, because it's right on the train tracks. And it's very, very narrow stretch of land. But I think that that number needs to be really emphasized. People need to understand that it's not 1,200 units. The realistic number is much, much less than that. And I agree with Mr. Jackson's comment. I think that we are all thinking about the punitive part of this. And I thought it was powerful the way you had the projects lit up there. But I think it probably would be better to come in with something a little softer in the beginning, like just to introduce the program and then go into the punitive part of it. Because I think a lot of people have gotten kind of deaf to that at this point. They're just thinking, I'm going to make a stand, I don't care what it costs the town, type of thing. But I repeat that I think it's impressive the way you managed to put all these into our town, and we're still coming out with just a very slight impact on construction.
Okay. All right. So we'll open up to public comment. As we did last time, I'm going to ask, I'm going to allow 5 minutes per person for comments. I know we don't have a ton of people here, but just want to keep it moving. So name and address, please.
Good evening, Kevin McDonald. I have a few questions, and then I have some comments. Thank you, Ms. Gingrich, for the hard work you put in. I did have a few questions for you. Could you possibly bring up the MBTA picture up there on the West Street? The reason why I'm asking you to bring that up is because there seems to be some confusion. It appears as though the law says that we have to have this district within a half a mile of the T station. But then you stated that the West Street property is outside of that half a mile radius. Can you clarify that for the people of Wilmington?
Yeah, so half of the district, half of the overlay needs to be within a half mile.
Okay.
So.
Thank you for that. Ms. Gingrich, since you've been in town, can you name a list or a number of senior housing projects, specifically senior housing projects, that have been built in Wilmington?
I don't,
I can,
that's necessary.
right.
If you know the answer? mean-
Well, there have been over 55 developments that have been built. Spruce Farm up on Andover Street. The second portion of Whispering Pines was an over 55. I think that may be all of the age-restricted
Okay.
development that's happened.
The reason why I bring that up is because I think there's a tremendous deficiency for housing for seniors in town. And the problem that I have with this proposal that the town is putting forth is that it's given this district to private developers and private landowners. The town of Wilmington has many, many scattered lots throughout town. And I would have liked to seen a list of the town-owned properties and have this district include the town land, so the town has control of this district for its own property so that it can provide housing for seniors and that sort of thing. The other problem that I have with this proposal is there are some 40B projects that are already built, and they have to have a 10% component. So you got Regency Place that would need 12 units of affordable housing. You have the West Street proposal that would need 132 units, but it would need 13 affordable housing units. So I believe that's like 25 units right there. And the Burlington Ave project, that was a 40B project, Burlington Ave. How many units were there? Was it
108?
108? So there's another 10 units. So we're talking 35 affordable units. The problem that I have with this is the MBTA zoning is a market rate zoning. So you take this existing zoning and you change it to market rate zoning, and then the potential is opened up for raising the rents on these affordable units, and that they are no longer affordable. So we could lose 35 units. The other problem that I have is that your zoning places along Route 38 that are really not conducive to housing and having kids playing in that area. I can just imagine where the kids are going to be playing when they're living above Wilmington House of Pizza or the barber shop or Bill and Bob's or the Hyundai dealership. To me, it's a failed proposal, and I'm disappointed in it, and I think that the town really could have done better and should do better. We have some selectmen here, and in my estimation, the most responsible thing for them to do is to cancel this meeting and reschedule it for like the end of the year so you can actually get it right. Identify the town parcels of land, okay? And keep in mind that the whole purpose of the state doing this is to help mitigate the crisis in the housing market. If you think about 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts, and I'll just throw a number out, like every town, like say, graduates 200 people a year. It's a lot more than that, but just think over the years, how many kids have graduated, how many have graduated from college, and how many want housing? That's part of the housing crisis. The other crisis is...
Mr. McDonald, that's 5 minutes if you could wrap up, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I stand opposed to this, and I think it's a really bad proposal. I do agree with Mr. Jackson that it's very heavy-handed on the punishment part, but in reality, there's other punishments other than losing the funding, and the punishments are losing affordable housing, losing the ability to take advantage of the zoning for our own properties. And so I would hope that you would be open to a change, and I see my selectmen here, and I would really hope that one of them takes a leadership position and proposes an agenda item where we change this date and actually get it right. So that's what all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Did you have something?
Can I speak to that?
Absolutely. I had a couple of questions, but if you had something specific.
Sure. So, so town properties actually are not eligible for compliance with the zoning. So, a town cannot just propose town property for the zoning district. It doesn't. The state, the spreadsheet won't allow it. So those properties wouldn't be eligible to count for any unit capacity. So they wouldn't get us to where we need to go. So that wasn't an option for us to use town property for the zoning. We were really careful about the 40B developments to make sure that we crafted the zoning in a way that kept those developments out of zoning compliance. So they are either too tall or they're too close to the setback, so that those properties will, they need their 40B permit to exist still, even if this zoning is applied. So we were really careful to keep those properties. Actually, the select board talked about it for a few meetings, just to make sure that that was a priority, so that we didn't lose the affordable component, which is actually 20 to 25% of the units. So it's even more units than was mentioned. So that was really important for us to keep. And then the Main Street portion of the plan, Main Street was included in our master plan that is a little bit old now at this point, but did talk about mixed use along Main Street.
Mr. Bullen, just a quick clarification,
Yeah, real quick. Yep.
and just an idea. Communities in the country have put in land in a land trust corporation. So I think there could be a legal way around that aspect of the law, which may prevent the town from having their own property on their own land. In other words, identify some parcels, put it in a land trust corporation, and have legal language so that it's specifically for, say, senior housing or something like that. And don't shake your head, because I don't think you know what you're talking about.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I didn't know if I'd be able to speak, but George Ferdinand from Tewksbury, Massachusetts, 56 Pratt Street. Hi. Good to see you, folks. I just wanted to mention, about a month ago, I put in a Freedom of Information Act on the grants that would be cut and how much Wilmington has received in the last 10 years, and then was going to divide it by 10 and just have that figure. I wanted to say that the Wilmington Planning Board has done an excellent job in putting the zoning proposal together, of which I feel the governor just kind of threw it on you. I wanted to just mention something about October 7th, and then I'll be finished with my comments. On October 7th, the state Supreme Court had oral arguments. The Attorney General, Andrea Campbell, is suing the town of Milton for not complying with the law, which requires it to zone for more housing production. But while the lawsuit hinged first and foremost on the idea that the law is mandatory, the court focused more on the questions Milton has raised about whether the Attorney General has the power to enforce the guidelines and whether the guidelines themselves are valid. I prefer legislation by Senator Elizabeth Warren and Representative Cleaver called the American Housing and Economic Mobility Act, basically because they'll have some guidelines to follow, but if you don't follow them, then at town meeting you can vote it down and they're not going to force it on you. Lastly, I'd just like to say to the residents, don't worry if the Supreme Court rules in favor of the AG. They will give a period of time to comply and will reimburse the grant funds that the towns have spent. And you would say, why? Who the heck are you? How do you know what's up? I'll tell you this, the reason why I believe they would is because don't forget, in 2 years they got to get elected again. And you know there's going to be some candidates that come forward with this issue alone, and they will have to answer if they do that to the people. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, good evening. Frank West, 2 Birchwood Road. For the record, I'm a member of the Select Board, but I'm speaking here as an individual. I guess a couple of questions that I have is that when we looked at when I was at the annual town meeting, and basically the vote was to kick this back to the planning board. When we voted at town meeting, that vote, if we had voted, would have been a 2/3 vote for a zoning change. This is a 50+1% vote. This is not what we kicked, in my opinion, this is not what we kicked down the road to be here in December on. So I'm wondering, how did it come before a 2/3 vote to a 50+1 vote?
Okay.
You wouldn't mind?
Sure. And I know the town manager can speak to this too. So when we proposed this at the annual town meeting, with the information that we had at the time and with legal's opinion, that article we believed was a majority article. So in the meantime, as more information has come in, as zoning has been approved, and there's been more intricacies about it with the AG's office, we were advised after that, leading up to this this warrant, that the 2 articles, the change to site plan review and the change to inclusionary, may need a 2/3 vote. So that's why they were separated out as separate articles. So the belief was that the whole article was a majority article at the annual town meeting.
But it was a 2/3 vote that we were going to take, not a majority, it was a 2/3.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. West, Jonathan Eaton, 78 Glen Road, Town Moderator. The quantum of vote at the annual town meeting this spring would have been just a simple majority. It would have been, yeah.
Again, I stand corrected. First of all, what I guess real quick is that I want to applaud the planning board for taking the initiative to take a bad thing and try to make it as palatable as possible. Honestly, I'm opposed to it. I will vote no on December 7th. I don't think that the state should be strong-arming us, to be honest with you. I would want to work with our state legislators. If we vote no and they take our vote, our funding away, or potential of some of our funding, I would go upon our state legislators to say, look, the people in Wilmington pay state tax, so we should be getting the benefit of the tax that we pay. We have lotteries here. We have all the excise tax. We pay state tax, so we should be getting the benefit of the state. Humble opinion. As far as Deming Way goes, that's state property, so we have no effect on that, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. We don't pay anything into Deming Way, correct? So any funding, it's state property.
We're not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I believe that my understanding is it's state property. We go down there, we might provide some cursory services, have the police come down and stuff like that because they're encompassed in the town, but they're state property. So if they reduce their property on their funding on their property, again, I'm not saying that it doesn't benefit Wilmington residents that live there, but again, at the end of the day, that's state property. As far as the what could be built, what couldn't be built, it's all conjecture. I mean, if you're planning for 1,200 units, the idea is just that the reality might be 200, the reality might be 500, 800, 1,200. We don't know. And the last thing I want to say on that is that, just because somebody's not going to build on it today, like, we'll pick on Wilmington House of Pizza, that's a huge lot. I mean, you could put something like what went over at Yentile's Farm that that big apartment complex or condo complex, I'm not sure what it is. So you could put something like that with one layer of retail and then 2 layers up. So if you look at the size of that, that's potentially what you could be looking at. And correct me if I'm mistaken on that.
We allow
Yeah.
the zoning that's being proposed is a 3-story height zoning. It's the same height that's allowed today on Main Street, yeah.
Right, so what you'd have is that, like that new building that's put up on Yentiles Farm that, again, nobody thought anyone would ever build there, but there it is. So I just, again, I want to, I just want to say one last thing is, and apologize for taking so long, is that this is not an affordable housing proposal. This is not to get affordable houses into Wilmington. These are market rate houses. We're looking at the potential of an affordable component to it, but all the condo complexes and apartments that we have in Wilmington now, prices haven't come down. The idea is that, hey, let's build another 100, 200, 300, 400 units, and prices will come down. It's not going to come down. So I applaud the work of the planning board. I applaud the work of the finance committee and their deliberations, but I just think it's a bad thing for the town. Thank you.
Just a quick question
Very
for
quick,
Mr.
yeah.
Kindrich. Ms. Kindrich, do you have a backup plan? In other words, if the town votes this down, what's your backup plan? What's your alternative?
I can take there's no plan right now for another special town meeting.
No. The selectmen can call a special town meeting.
They
But
could.
no, that's not my question. My question is, the planning board, what is your alternative or your backup plan if this gets shot down? Do you have a backup plan? Or an alternative
Alternative
location?
locations, we looked at multiple alternative locations. So if people wanted that, we could dial that back up, but I don't think that's
So if
really what people want. I think
if
what
the
we have
people
here
want
is the
that,
best. Hold on, I think what we have here is the best one, and that's why we put it.
I know a lot of us disagree with it, though.
Well, I would disagree with you if you suggested
You can
something else.
disagree with
That's
me.
it.
I respect that. Please disagree with me if you want. But what I'm saying is, how come you guys don't have something as a backup plan, an alternative?
To put forth as, no, we don't.
Okay, so in other words, if the selectmen, who should be calling a special town meeting or an agenda item, right, Mr. De Palma, wanted an alternative, you don't even have anything to bring forth as an alternative.
Hold on. No, we don't have an alternative. The planning board has gone through, or the planning director has gone through multiple meetings with the select board, and the decision for the town of Wilmington has been made to move forward to a December 7th meeting, and that's with this article.
There's
put
no,
forth,
there's
and that's-
no doubt in my mind that that's what you're doing. But here's the question. I think it's...
If it's the same question, I'm gonna.
No, I think it's irresponsible to not have an alternative proposal. If this gets shot down and people don't want to lose money and we can have a special town meeting for an alternative, why aren't you doing something to have an alternative?
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Gary Palmer, 46 Swain Road, and I come here as a resident. Congratulations, you people did a hell of a job in plain English. It was hard, but what you have finally made a decision on will be the best for the town. I can't see someone building an apartment unit where Dunkin' Donuts is. I can't see someone building an apartment building where Sunrise is. And if they do, you still have to look at it that there's parking involved and all the other criteria that you need to surround that building. You can't walk in and say, I'm going to put a building here because the state tells us we can. You can say, I want to, but you have to, the town is not being pushed aside like it is with 40B projects. You have your regulations that you're going to have to, you will be able to use. As far as the locations, I commend it. I was concerned when not thinking that The Princeton property site wouldn't be involved, and the West Street site wouldn't be involved, but understanding the 40B complex of it, I can understand, now I understand it. I just want to reiterate that I support you, and I do support, at first I did not, but now I do support this project. Thank you.
So, Ms. McDonald, we've already heard from you 3 times.
Yeah, I'm not looking to make any comments, but I just
What-
want to see if Valerie
Commenting
Gingrich
now.
could explain to Mr. De Palma what a by right zoning is.
So she actually talked about that earlier, so
I
thank
know
you for your
it
comment.
obviously didn't sink into his head.
Okay, well, that's, thank you.
Hello. Hello. My name is Don Lysko. I live at 16 School Street. Actually, just looking at it, I think it's a fairly good job. It shouldn't affect the community too much. Probably the best option. I do have a comment about our Main Street. It is looking kind of sad, actually. You keep mentioning banks. I think we have enough banks in town. How about we be a little more proactive in making it better downtown? Use this as an opportunity to get more small businesses, you know, add something that would add to the fabric of the community, make it more of a walkable downtown, better area for people when they get off the train. We have a train station, but there's nothing there. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Good evening, Joe Maselli, 25 North Street, member of the Economic Development Committee, but speaking in my own capacity tonight. Once again, Val, thank you for all your work. I know you've done this presentation so many times, so you can probably have it memorized by now. Planning Board, FinCom, thank you for all your work. Just did want to respond to something that was said earlier by someone. The Select Board and these committees did move back this meeting to as far as we possibly could. So there's no really push it back to the end of the year because you have December and then you have New Year. So unless there's a month after December, we can't move it back any further. But wanted to thank you all for that. Did want to bring up another point though. To my knowledge, there's still a vacancy on the Finance Committee, and it's been 6 months since the May town meeting. We have the special town meeting coming up in about 40 days, and I know there were 2 applicants over the summer for FinCom, and they were 2 qualified applicants, and they weren't chosen. So it's a little troubling to me that there's still a vacancy on the most powerful committee in this town, and it's now October, going to be December with the special town meeting, and there's still a vacancy. And if there's an 8-person committee and there's a split vote in any meeting, say in between now and that special town meeting, or even after when we start talking budget and all that for actual town meeting next year, that's a big problem. And I know I was one of the applicants. This is not about me, but I want to make sure that as a town, as a finance committee, business can move forward appropriately and make sure that there's no issues with anything coming up for town meeting next year. So I just hope that's resolved soon. I hope you guys find a qualified applicant, but I just find it very troubling that's taken 6 months to have this vacancy filled, and we're here October 22nd, and it's still open. So I just wanted to, that's my own thought. Call me crazy, but I just wanted to bring that up. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Just a question for the Finance Committee. Is Mr. Doherty still on the committee?
Yes, he is.
Okay, is he going to be here tonight?
No, he will not be
He's
here
not
tonight.
zooming in or anything?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone. We will move on to Article 2. Article 2, to see if the town will vote to amend the zoning bylaw to make changes to the site plan review section 6.5 or to take any other action related thereto. Amend section 6.5.3 by adding the following to the end of the second paragraph. Final action on site plans for allowed uses per Table 1 Principal Use Regulations shall be limited to approval or approval with the imposition of reasonable conditions. And I will turn it over to Ms. Gingrich again.
Sure. So this article is really kind of cleaning up the text of our site plan review regs, our site plan review bylaw. clarifies that this is already the case, but it's not explicitly stated that with as-of-right uses, with uses that you can do without a discretionary approval, the planning board through site plan review, they're going to look at whether parking requirements are met. They're going to look at the design of the pedestrian streetscape, and they can either approve an as-of-right use through site plan review, or they can approve it with reasonable conditions, but they cannot deny it. So this is making that very, very clear so that there aren't any red flags with the AG's office for the as-of-right multifamily use should the zoning pass for the overlay district.
Thanks. Does the board have any questions on that? No? Finance?
No.
Okay. Public comment on Article 2? Okay, moving on. Article 3, to see if the town will vote to amend the zoning bylaw to delete the current inclusionary zoning section 6.11 in its entirety and, 6.11 in its entirety and replace it with a new section 6.11, or to take any other action related thereto. This article adds the MBTA Communities Multifamily Overlay District to the existing section 6.11 inclusionary housing so that affordable housing units are required with development in the MOD.
Thank you. So this, like the chair said, this article takes our existing inclusionary housing bylaw, which requires affordable units when new multifamily development is constructed. It takes that bylaw and adds the overlay district into it, and it provides that 15% of the units would need to be affordable, as long as that's approved by the state. We did have an economic feasibility analysis done for the 15% requirement, and it came back that it is supported in Wilmington's market. So we should be able to get the 15% approved by the state. If for some reason that's not approved, the fallback would be the 10% that we're allowed to require without a feasibility study. But we are confident in our economic feasibility analysis that was done by a third-party expert and actually paid for by the state. So this article inserts that overlay district and its requirements for affordable housing so that if there is new development in that overlay district, a portion of it would be affordable.
Board have any comment? No? Finance committee?
No.
Thank you. Ms. Gingrich, can you clarify something? Because this overlay district seems to state by law that it's a market rate zone. Can you clarify the comments you just made about the 10% and the 15% and going to the state to get approval?
Can you just, what are the numbers?
Sure. So the guidelines that we have to follow for the zoning allow for, towns can require 10% affordable housing in their zoning district to comply without any questions asked. So we're allowed to require the 10%. If you want to go above the 10% to a 15%, which is what we have, you have to do an independent economic feasibility analysis by a third party and submit that. If your zoning's passed, you're going to submit it for compliance. You submit that EFA with your compliance package to the state for their review and approval. So they can approve higher as long as the market supports it. So the idea is that they don't want communities saying, well, we're going to require 20% affordable housing, and that in effect is going to make it so that housing can't be built. They want to make sure that doesn't happen. So they want to make sure that you have a feasibility analysis that shows that 15% affordable is supported by the market, and there we have real life examples in town of where that has happened. Not through the overlay district, that just through our mixed use district at 168 Lowell Street. 15% of those units are affordable. Cross Street, those 15% of those are affordable. So our market does support that requirement, and we'll be submitting that to the state.
How many units are on Cross Street? The Cross Street development that you talk about that had 15%, how many units are in that building?
I
Do you know?
don't know for sure, but I think it's something like 18.
It is 18.
18, okay. So can you just give me the specific part of the state law with this overlay district that gives the town the right to actually require a 10% requirement on that housing? Because this is very confusing. Because I was under the impression that it was a straight-up market rate overlay district.
So, go ahead, if you want.
I mean, it can be. So the town can just not require affordable housing. But it's not in the legislation. It's in the guidelines that were issued by EOHLC. And those are on their website.
Okay, because a guideline is totally different than a statute. And it appears that this overlay district is a statute. And I know a lot of developers that I'm friends with, and I personally don't know any developer that would want to give up profit for providing an additional 5% or 15% affordable units. I actually even know one guy that he won't even build any 40Bs again because he ended up taking money out of his own pocket to go provide and build those affordable units. So I'm very confused because the statute says that it's market rate zoning. I haven't seen anything in it that says it's 10%. If you can please just give me the section in there where it says it's market rate zoning with the exception of 10% requirement for the town.
So I don't think she has the section, and it's,
Do you have it?
no, I don't. It's
It's
part of the guideline. Oh,
It's not in the...
So it's Section 3A, which is the legislation, part of Section 3A, which was adopted by the legislator, basically establishes the right for EOHLC to create the guidelines. So that is that.
But it's not
part.
created.
Yes, they are
Yeah.
created.
The guidelines created, but the statute doesn't have it.
No,
There's
no,
no
the
statute that says
statute
you have to have
refers to
10% zoning. Correct?
Just
Is
to
that wrong or
clarify,
right?
Just to clarify though, when you're saying guidelines aren't law and people won't comply with it if they don't have to, it's guidelines from the state. Once we adopt it into zoning, then it is a requirement. It's not a guideline, it's a requirement at the town level.
The whole overlay district is referred to as a market rate zoning, okay? So a guideline and a statute is different. I totally understand what a guideline is, but you're trying to like tell us that you're confusing people. You're saying that there could be 10%, 15%, but I haven't seen any part of the statute that says there's got to be, you're allowed to change that market rate to 10%. So if you can tell me the part of the statute that says that, I'd be very grateful.
So, in my opinion, you've gotten your answer. We're at 5 minutes.
What? I got my answer?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Okay, can
Thank
you
for your comments.
repeat again the part of the statute that says that?
No, I can't.
You
can
can't,
go back and
'cause
watch
you
it on
didn't say it.
WCTV if you need to.
I will do that.
Okay.
You're a prize.
I mean, there's nothing I can do for you, right? You're not going to hear the answer, so there's nothing I can do.
Because you don't have the answer.
I gave you
And
the
it's-
answer.
She gave you the
confu-
answer.
I gave you the
She
answer.
gave you
was
the
a-
answer.
that
You-
was a
Sir,
guideline.
thank you for your comment.
Guideline.
Thank you
Guideline's
for your
not a
comment.
statute.
The guidelines are in the statute. They are referenced in the statute.
But that's not a statute.
Oh my God. Sorry.
It's
Thank
like
you.
a
Thank you,
comma
thank you, Mr.
or
McDonald.
parentheses.
Mr. McDonald, thank you. Anyone else on Article 3? Okay. That concludes the zoning articles portion of the warrant, and the planning board will now reconvene in room 9 to discuss recommendations for the zoning articles discussed tonight. Thank you. Oh, I will turn the meeting back over to
Thank you
Ms.
very
Manganelli.
much. Thank you. Great job. Okay, so we'll continue with Article 4 now, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, transfer from available funds or borrow pursuant to any applicable statute a sum of money for the purpose of paying unpaid bills of previous years, or take any other action related thereto. Mr. Slagle, would you like to address that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Eric Slagle, I'm Town Manager. Yes, so unfortunately, the town has been presented with an invoice from SHI for $4,111.80. The invoice is from September 19th, 2022, and so it is late. And in order to pay it, we have to go to town meeting to get authorization.
Who is SHI?
This is for, I believe it's for, it's our E-Code 360, you know, where we, where the town keeps its bylaws. If you go to check the bylaws online, that's E-Code. And so this is, I believe, an E-Code bill.
Okay, thank you.
And it got lost in the mail. They didn't present it to us timely, and so now we have to get town meeting's authority to pay it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Any questions concerning this article? Any questions from the audience? Can you hit 3 minutes, please?
Just a question for the manager. Before this gets paid, can you identify an article at town meeting where the town voted to appropriate this money to have this work done? That's all. Would you be able to get us that article? Because I don't remember ever seeing an article at town meeting that appropriated money to have this work done. That's all.
That's probably it's within the budget for the department that is using this. So you wouldn't necessarily see it identified individually. It's within the budget for the department.
Yeah, the question that people are going to be asking is, how many other things are hidden in the budget? What's the dollar amount before something goes out for public bid or something goes before the town for approval to allow that to happen? That's all.
Any other questions or comments?
I just had a quick clarifying question. For these articles, well, this one and the ones prior, is the Finance Committee going to recommend like each article whether it passes or not? Like, will the Finance Committee have like their own recommendation?
We'll have a recommendation
Okay.
for the first 3 articles and then these 2 articles.
Okay.
We'll be meeting after this meeting is closed.
Okay, great. And I was just, this may be a town manager question, but are all the residents going to get mailed to them like a packet of the articles? 'Cause I believe that's done every year. I could be wrong on that, but just to raise awareness about the meeting.
So normally on the town meeting, we send out a packet that details the warrant and certain other information in it. He's asking if we're going to do that for the special town meeting. Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, if we don't, I think that's fine. I mean, if we want to save the money. I don't know. I was just thinking of it, but just wanted to ask that, so thank you.
The warrant.
I just want to clarify something, that this is back in 2022. This is not on Mr. Slagle. This is our other train wreck manager. That's all I wanted to clarify. Thanks.
Are there any other comments regarding this article? We'll move on to Article 5. To see if the town will vote to amend the vote taken under Article 22 of the April 25, 2020 annual town meeting, authorizing the Board of Selectmen to acquire by gift, purchase, eminent domain, or otherwise all or a portion of the property or interest therein located at 64 Wildwood Street and abutting Wildwood Cemetery for general municipal purposes, including possible expansion of the Wildwood Cemetery, to raise and appropriate, transfer from available funds, or borrow pursuant to any applicable statute an additional sum of money for the acquisition of such property and structures thereon, including all costs incidental and related thereto, and further, to authorize the Board of Selectmen to take such actions and execute such documents and agreements as are necessary to effectuate the purposes of this article, or take any other article related thereto. Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Eric Slagle, Town Manager. So as folks who pay attention to town meeting are aware, this was an article that was originally promulgated back in 2020 for the eminent domain taking of the property at 64 Wildwood Street. As with eminent domain cases, as they happen a lot, the town comes forward with its belief as to what the property value is. The owners of the properties that are taken under eminent domain often have a different idea as to what the value is, and the resolution of that dispute often comes down to either litigation or a settlement. So the original amount that was funded back in 2020 was based on the town's estimate as to what the value of the property was. After the property owner had investigations done into the property and the town reviewed the assertions of the property owner, we came to a resolution as to what we believe difference between their value is and what our value is, and so there would be an additional request from town meeting of $500,000 to cover the settlement, basically, of the eminent domain case. I know that Wilmington has not done a large amount of eminent domain cases in the past, but just to assure folks that this is kind of routine for eminent domain cases. The town comes in with one number, and obviously the property owner believes that the property is worth more, and eventually you have to come to a resolution. The appraisal that was done by the town was based on an assumption that the property could only support one building lot. After further investigation by the property owner and confirmed by further investigation by the town, we believe there's likelihood that there could be more lots built on that property, and so that would be the justification for the increased settlement amount. And this does include relocation costs as well, which were not part of the original.
Do you know offhand what the original purchase price was, or settlement is for 400,000 even?
No, I don't have it in front of me.
Somewhere in.
I think it was $342,000, or $342,600.
Thank you. So now we're saying that the value is actually closer to over 800,000.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody on the Finance Committee have a question?
Mr. Slagle, where would the money come from? Free cash or?
We believe it would be appropriating that from free cash, yes.
Thank you.
One other question, that initial purchase price, that was already paid, so this is just an additional amount that
Correct.
that we're asking for now?
Correct.
Any audience members?
Yes, Kevin McDonald. I'm pretty familiar with this property. I actually went down and talked to the family members, and I was told that our previous manager went down there. One of the ladies was a handicapped lady, and he told her that they had to move out. They had not been given living expenses, moving expenses, or anything like that. And then the town went and put a sign before these people got any kind of money that said no trespassing. So, in all honesty, this is an unbelievable gift to the town. And if Mr. Slagle, are you the one who negotiated this?
No.
Okay, well, I got to, for once, give our legal counsel some credit for this, because it's an unbelievable gift to the town, because it could have been like an extraordinary, huge amount more based on harassment and all kinds of other things. But I did have a question for Mr. McGaldy here, because the highway department, you guys are the ones that produce signs for the town. Can you tell me if you put that sign there, or one of your men put that sign there, that do no trespassing? The manager directed you to do that?
Jamie McGaldy, Public Works Director. Honestly, I do not recall.
Okay, because I've seen pictures of it, and usually the town produces signs like that. So the property, in all honesty, this is before the town had any compliance with 40B. So these people could have actually came before the town and proposed a 40B project, and they could have been suing the town for millions of dollars more. So Congratulations, Mr. Slagle. You did a good job. This is a massive gift to the town. But it's a learning lesson for the town, because the town is trying to take the Sharapa Farm. There's been discussions, numerous executive sessions
Mr. McDonald,
with the
I'm going
selectmen.
to ask you to stay on topic, please. We're
Yeah,
not
this is
talking about
topic.
the-
It's eminent
No,
domain.
it's not. We're not talking about the Sharapa
Well,
Farm.
it's a lesson.
We're talking about
It's a lesson.
Wildwood Street. Kindly stay on that,
Yeah,
please.
well, I'm trying to explain to you that maybe your board should have your radar up and vote against any selectman proposal to take the Sharapa property,
Thank you
because
very much,
it's going to
Mr.
be a
McDonald.
massive,
Thank you
massive
very much.
amount of money.
Is anybody else got a comment to make? Thank you.
Hi, Judy O'Connell, Assistant Town Manager. I just wanted to add a point of clarification, if I may. The amount for the eminent domain was actually $450,000, and the reason why the recipients received less is because they did have back taxes that needed to be paid to the town. I will say, just in fairness, to set the record straight, that the select board, as well as the previous town manager, were very cognizant of the family dynamics and the residents that were residing there. I just want to state for the public record that the town was mindful of that. There are liability factors, there's health and safety, and once the town had possession of the property, we needed to do what we needed to do for liability, and we certainly made reasonable attempts with the family on multiple occasions to see that there was, safe passage and adequate means provided to the families to move on. So I just want to set the record straight that this was not a hostile taking of any kind. And also, too, with the report that was generated for the one development lot, that was what the town took a position on at the time, and then future information became available, and the town is making an effort to do the right thing and partner with the family and the heirs of that property. So this is an example of doing that. Yes, it is in the form of a settlement, but in no way, shape, or form the town act in an ill manner to seek this property. It obviously, we had a municipal need, and we went about it all the right way, and we're just making it right financially at this time with the new information that we've been provided. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Mr. McDonald, you've already
Just-
spoken on
Yeah,
this.
no, this is just a very important question for the manager. I totally understand that this is a settlement for the property and its value, but are there any components in the legal agreement that prevent them from taking legal action against the town for harassment? And by the way, Judy O'Connell was totally wrong. That sign was put
Again,
up.
stick with your comment to the
Yeah,
town
I
manager.
am.
and
I got to
let's not
clarify
go
that,
off
though,
track.
because
Either
the
that or you
sign
can
was
please
put
take a
up
seat.
when the people were still there,
All
okay?
right, thank you. Thank you,
Okay,
Mr.
Mr.
McDonald.
Slagle, can you answer that question as to whether or not the settlement agreement is written in such a way so that no other legal action can be taken against the town for harassment?
So, Madam Chair, just so you know, the settlement agreement hasn't been drafted yet. We do need to wait for the funding in order to finalize the settlement agreement.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
I
thank you
w-
very
I would
much.
just make the
You've had your
suggestion that
opportunity, Mr.
that would be
McDonald.
a very important component of the agreement. Thank you.
Teresa?
Does it, I'm sorry?
One final question.
I can't see down there.
Sorry about giving the wrong amount there. I was on the GIS map and I just pulled the number from the wrong line. But one question about the 500,000. How are we funding that?
Free cash.
Free cash, okay. Thanks.
Does anybody else have any comments or questions concerning this article? If not, we shall I'll take a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? It's unanimous. All right, everybody, this open hearing is now closed. The Finance Committee will continue to remain in this room, and we will deliberate on these articles 1 through 5. And you're welcome to stay if you're interested. We appreciate your cooperation tonight and participation. Thank you. Are we all set? Okay, John Doherty is excused. Mary Ann.
Here.
Chris Diorio is excused. Brad Jackson.
Here.
Indy Levine. Levino. Indy Levine is excused. Joe?
I'm here.
And Scott?
Here.
And myself. Okay, so we are here to deliberate on Article 1, the MBTA Communities Multifamily Overlay District.
For the purposes of discussion, I'd move that the Finance Committee recommend approval of Article 1.
Okay, so we need to read the article into the minutes.
Okay, well, Article 1, to see if the town will vote to amend the zoning bylaw and associated zoning district map of the town of Wilmington as follows. And the article reads, as presented in the warrant booklet. And Mr. Jackson, you have a motion on the table. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, okay.
Second for discussion or second to?
Second for discussion.
Okay?
I'd just like to comment that I think, I made my comments about the presentation clear, but I think the impact of this was very creatively minimized by the planning board. And I don't think, as much as I am a person who doesn't like the big arm of big government, I think that since the impact and the potential impact to the town of Wilmington is minimal, or the potential is minimal, I would support this article.
Any other?
Yeah, I'll just say that, like Mr. Jackson, I was very wary about the long arm of the state coming into Wilmington. For me, it's purely a risk-benefit analysis at this point. And does the risk of non-compliance far outweigh the impact, which, based on everything I've heard, is minimized at this point? So I just wanted to put my comments on the table.
Scott, do you have anything you want to add?
Nothing further to add.
Okay.
I agree with
Okay. Mary Ann?
Steve.
Yes, I agree with everyone. I mean, it's the least impact to the town, and it far outweighs, the penalties that we could face.
So I want to thank you for bringing that up so nicely, because now I don't have to comment on it. I think you captured exactly the way I feel about it. Not a fan of this law, but it is a law, and we have been able to minimize the impact on the town. And looking down the road, we have some big projects that will be affected, and that will affect everybody financially. So since we are the Finance Committee, our duty and responsibility is not to react emotionally to things, but to review, analyze, and recommend based upon the financial impact to the town and to the individual taxpayer. And I think what's been expressed here does that very nicely. So it seems like we're in agreement here. If we're ready, we can take a vote.
Motion to approve Article 1?
Well, we already have
It's
a
already on the
table.
I thought it's,
Yeah,
sorry.
so all those in favor of the approval of Article 1?
Aye.
Okay, great. Unanimous. Okay, so Article 2 is to amend the zoning bylaw to make changes to the site plan review section. And let's see what page that's
Page 8.
on. Thank you. To see if the town will vote to amend the zoning bylaw to make changes to the site plan review section 6.5, or to take any other action related thereto. Item 1, amend section 6.5.3 by adding the following to the end of the second paragraph. Final action on site plans for allowed uses per Table 1 Principal Use Regulations shall be limited to approval or approval with the imposition of reasonable conditions.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Comments? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, unanimous. All right, and number 3, amend the zoning bylaw to delete the current inclusionary housing section 6.11 in its entirety and replace it with the new Section 6.11, inclusionary housing. And that is on page 8, to see if the town will vote to amend the zoning bylaw to delete the current inclusionary zone in Section 6.11 in its entirety. And this goes on for several pages, so we're going to take the article as presented in the warrant book. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
That's to move, we recommend approval.
All those in favor? Unanimous. Okay, Article 4, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, transfer from available funds, or borrow pursuant to any applicable statute a sum of money for the purpose of paying unpaid bills of previous years, or take any other action related thereto.
Motion to approve Article 4.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous. Article 5, to see if the town will vote to amend the vote taken under Article 22 of the April 25, 2020 annual town meeting, authorizing the Board of Selectmen to acquire by gift, purchase, eminent domain, or otherwise all or a portion of the property or interest therein located at 64 Wildwood Street in abutting Wildwood Cemetery for general municipal purposes, including possible expansion of the Wildwood Cemetery, to raise and appropriate, transfer from available funds, or borrow pursuant to any applicable statute an additional sum of money for the acquisition of such property and structures therein, including all costs incidental and related thereto. And further, to authorize the Board of Selectmen to take such actions and execute such documents and agreements as are necessary to effectuate the purposes of this article, or take any other action related thereto. And I will note that the dollar value is $500,000 to be taken from free cash. Do we have a motion?
Motion for approval.
I'll second it.
Okay. All those in favor? Unanimous again. Okay, terrific. The last order of business is we have some minutes to be approved dated July 9th, 2024.
Madam Chair, I'll recuse from this one. I was absent for this meeting.
Okay.
Did you do A&R?
Yeah, I had made a note about a slight change on page 4 of the minutes under reorganization.
What was your change, just so we can approve the petition?
We had Ms. Meganelli being appointed vice chair twice. One of them should have been Ms. Galezo being appointed as the secretary.
Oh, you're absolutely right. I don't want to do this twice.
So I'll make a motion to approve the minutes with the amendments that Scott has pointed.
We don't have a quorum if he's recusing himself.
Oh.
So.
Oh, yeah.
President voted. So he's present. He doesn't have to vote.
All right, we can do that, I guess.
Yeah, it would be a 4-0-1 vote.
Okay.
5 votes, it's just an abstention.
All right.
That's my understanding.
No,
Yeah,
that's
you're right.
reasonable.
Yeah.
I think we've
It's
done
a-
that before, yeah. Okay, so we've made that a change, and Tommy, you'll make that change for us? Thank you. All those in favor? Okay, so 4 approving,
And
1
abstention.
present, and abstaining. Okay. And the last order of business is a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.